All right. Let's go back to the beginning, okay? So it's such a big interruption, right? Masking? Sorry. Asora Ma'amore is Nivra Ho'il. This is a Mishnah in Piki Ovis. The world was created with 10 utterances. It says 10 times Vayomer, the sentence in Ma'amoris. In the Bereshis, it says 7 days of creation, 6 days of creation. And these are the Ma'amoris that created the whole world. The Mishnah asks, but couldn't it be created with one minor? What then was it created with 10 Ma'amoris? Elo, except daily it is in order to take revenge and to punish the Rishoyim. To destroy the world that was created by Asora Ma'amoris. In other words, the world was created by 10 Ma'amoris, therefore it gives it a special status, a special value, and the Rishoyim who destroy it therefore get their punishment. And to provide good reward for tzaddikim who sustain the world that was created as Asora Ma'amoris. 10 utterances, 10 statements. Okay? If you want to join, we can. I don't know who is suitable to join. I have no idea what we think, but they can make copies of the paper.
I could share with someone.
No, best thing is make copies. Rebbe is not here. Make a couple of copies. Make several copies. What? Already?
No. Oh, you're not going to wait?
No, I'm going to wait. Go ahead.
It's hard for me to understand. Well, I understand that wisdom is above what can I grasp. Fine. So, there is a point to punish, or there isn't a point to punish, or it's not really punishment, it's not just clearing, like they say, clearing the soul, and therefore it's like a correction of something, so fine. But if it's not a punishment, how come every time it sounds like it's a punishment and it's a bad thing? Or Hashem, or whoever is seeing. So it's kind of confusing for me. Very confusing.
The principle of punishment.
Yeah.
Let me try and explain to you an overall concept while we're waiting. Does it make a difference to a person, to a human being, whether he lives in a jungle? You know what a jungle is? Or he lives in an established and orderly society? Makes a difference? What's the difference?
Comfortability.
That's all?
No. There'll be lots of poverty.
Okay.
Many.
What is the deepest? What is the greatest that comes to your mind?
Between a jungle and a city.
Yeah, for a human being.
Relaxation, in the jungle, open mind, I can say, I can say lots of things. I don't know.
All right.
Less humanity in the jungle.
Sorry?
There's less humanity in the jungle.
Yes. I'm asking, is there a difference to a human being whether he lives in a jungle or he lives in an orderly society?
Everything is nagish, is next to you. How would you say nagish? Like next to you, in the bed.
Available.
Available. Everything is available in the jungle.
The grocery store.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, the glass of
Everything.
milk.
Everything.
All right. Is that what you think too? Is that what you think?
You might behave more like an animal than exactly less humanity over there. You might behave more like an animal living in the jungle.
Right. You weren't here when the question was asked. So in answer to his question, I'm asking a question. I'd like your reaction. Is there a difference to a human being whether he lives in a jungle or he lives in the city, in an organized, orderly, established society? What is the difference?
The jungle is rule like who is stronger, he's the boss over there.
Right.
In the city, like it's not the human being perspective. You respect people, you appreciate another thing. More have purpose. In jungle, you just kill, eat, and this is your purpose in life.
Do you understand the difference? See what he said? Mita, did you hear what he said? Do you understand the difference between what was said, what you're saying, what he said? You see, the way the answers were coming was essentially the human being really is alone, whether he's in the jungle or is in the city. Except for his own comfort, the city provides more services than the jungle. But whether he's in the jungle or in the city, he lives really just in his own skin. He's only concerned about his own comfort. And the city provides more comfort.
That's why he built it.
Excuse me?
That's why he built it.
So HaYom is pointing out that for a human being to live in society has a completely different significance than just the comfort. Then the human being becomes a different person. He lives in a bigger environment than himself. He's not just concerned about himself. You understand?
Therefore,
I'll come to the next step. I want first to understand the difference. That changes his entire perspective on life itself. There's value to it, there's meaning. Outside, not beyond his own comfort, his own experience. We can ask the question in a narrower way, in a smaller way, so that we should be even more obvious. Is there a difference whether you sit and eat by yourself or you eat with a group of friends? Is there a difference? What's the difference?
You're aware for other people, are aware to you.
But it's not that if the milk is across the table, you have somebody bring it to you, right? Hey, pass me down the milk so you don't have to get up. That's not the reason. That's not a difference. Right?
The difference is that you control your behavior.
Why do you control behavior?
Because you're aware to other minds that might get a little opinion by the way that you feel or behaving. So you want
But does it mean, is that only restrictive, or does it mean something to you? What would you prefer? To eat by yourself or to eat in a group? What does a human being normally prefer? To eat with friends or to be in his little corner and stuff himself up with food?
no one wants to be alone.
No one wants to be alone. There's something to it, right? Because when a human being is alone, he kind of sinks to the lowest element. He does nothing going on in his life. Right? This is obvious, even at the most mundane and simple level of intelligence. On the higher level of intelligence, obviously there is even greater significance. Right? The principle of punishment is rooted in what word means. It's based. It's shoresh. Shoresh is that a person, a human being, a yid, is not just another little thing that eats and drinks, but he is significant. What significant means? He's important to the entire existence. He represents the entire existence. When a yid fails, then he brings the whole world down with him. When a yid does good, he elevates the whole world. Like the Rambam says, the Rebbe always quotes it, that when a yid does one good thing, conceivably he can bring redemption to the whole world. A person is not an isolated, one-on-one type of being, like an animal. An animal is insignificant, has no significance in the entire world. It's just what it is unto himself. A human being, a yid, he represents the entire world, entire creation. The Gemara says, Lama nivra ha'olam yichidi, ha'odam yichidi. Why was Adam created yichidi, alone, one? This question means and implies the following. All other creatures, every creature, the horse, the donkey, all were created too. Zochar and Keva. Right in the beginning, Zochar and Keva. Adam Rishon was created alone, one. And then afterwards, Chava was created from him. So the question is, why was he created alone, different than all other creatures? It is to teach us that one person has the value of the whole world. This is why there is punishment. It's not a question of punishment to give him suffering. It is to remind him that he is an important entity. A child, as he's growing up, if he is let alone to destroy, to do odd things without restraint, he loses self-respect. By restricting the child and telling him, showing him the right way of doing things, and not letting him do the wrong thing. The child may scream, may complain, may rebel, but deep down, that builds his self-respect. To say, hey, I'm a human being. Okay? All right, let's learn inside here. Basora Ma'amoris Nivra Ha'elam. This is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says the world was created with 10 utterances. And then the Mishnah asks, but is it not that it could have been created, it could be created with Maimer Echad? Hashem can create the world with Maimer Echad, one utterance. All of this is going to be explained as we go on in Maimer. That's what the whole point is, Maimer, to explain every detail of this statement. Elo, except, why was it in fact created with 10 utterances? It is in order to collect, so to speak, to take revenge and punishment for the Rishoyim, who destroyed the world, that was created with 10 utterances. And to give good reward to tzaddikim, who sustained the world that was created with 10 utterances. V'yodua, it's known, Mashihiksha B'zeh HaMedrash Shmuel. The question presented to Medrash Shmuel, this question is well known. And the question is, the Lama Yipora Min Horshoyim, why would there be special punishment to the Rishoyim? Lefi, because Mashe Nivra Basora Ma'amoris. Just because the world was created with 10 utterances, therefore this makes it that the Rishonim get punished. How does that change anything? Since that the world itself is such a world that could have been created with one minor. So how is the fact that it was created with 10 utterances make it any difference? Make it any more valuable? V'haloi, but is it not hakoine chayfetz? If somebody buys an article, shove zuz echot, and the article is worth one zuz, $1. But he goes and he buys it the anasora zuz. He buys it for $10. He could have bought it with $1, and instead he buys it with $10. And someone else comes, or echot, somebody comes, and he destroys the article. Okay? Hayim yishalem asora zuz, but he then have to pay 10 zuz, kifim asher zeh, the amount that this fool paid for it. Since it's only worth 1 zuz, so the article is worth, you went and you paid 10 zuz, so how does that make the article any more valuable? Right? So what is it shot? The world could have been created with 1 mimer. It was created with 10 mimoris, and that makes it punishable if you destroy it. How does it make it any more valuable and more significant if it was created with 10 mimoris? This is an obvious question that's read in the lesson in Shmuel. However, the principle in this is that what does the Mishnah mean to say? What is the intent over here? When he says, in order to punish, to bring punishments, and then also in order to give good reward, what is that imply over here? Hainu, this means to say, this refers to a different principle. And it is, that as a result of the fact that the world was created with 10 utterances, Oz yesh inyan schar v'oinish. Then, as a result of the fact that the world was created with 10 utterances, that made it possible, brought out into the world that inyan of schar v'oinish, of reward and punishment. She'im hoya niver b'maimar echad. For if the world would have been created with a single, one maimar, one's utterance, one statement, lei hoya schar v'oinish klal, then there would not have been the whole idea of schar v'oinish. Reward and punishment wouldn't exist. Why not? Mipnei, because then the whole principle of bechira, of free choice, of a person being able to act according to his own choice, would not have existed if we were created with one minor, with one statement. This is what we're going to discuss.
I have a question. Why are we asking about why he could have been, he could have made the world with one mama instead of that he did 10? He didn't even need to do it even with one mama. Not that he has to do one mama. To say he didn't even need any of them, why one mama? He could do without any mamas.
Well, this is also true. Hashem could have created the world in any which way that he wanted. But if Hashem so chose that the world should be, see the difference between when the world is created and we're going to learn this whole Indian, that Maimer, the principle of Maimer, Hashem speaking, is all an allegorical statement. You know what allegory means? It's like a moshel. It's not a real thing. Hashem doesn't have a mouth to speak. What is the principle of speech by Hashem? We are using the term speech to allude to something akin, to similar to what speech means to a human being. What does speech mean to a human being? That when a person speaks, before he speaks, that which he wants, that which he says, existed beforehand in his thought. The person doesn't create the whole idea as he speaks. The speech doesn't create the idea. The idea is created from thought, and then it becomes speech. So if the idea existed before in thought, so what did you have to speak for? You already have the idea.
There's not a lot of people that think before they speak.
What did you have to speak for if he already existed? The answer is that when the idea is in his thought, it does not exist independently of himself. It is just part of him. When he speaks, he becomes something separate from him. And this is the allegory, this is the allusion of the fact that we said Hashem created the world by speech, meaning that Hashem created the world in such a way, like you learned in Tanya, that the world has the sense like it is an independent and separate entity. Just like a word, when a person speaks a word, it becomes a separate entity. And somebody else can hear this word and take it away, and it can exist separate and independent of the person, of the mouth that's out of it. Today we can even record it, and it stays there forever. All right. Okay, so we're on the line right in the middle, Habchiro Club. So the Rebbe says, and please understand, for those who are not familiar with this type of learning, that everything that's being proposed here is going to be explained. But first, the way it is presented, first there's a statement of intent, and then he's going to explain what this is about. And he says that if it were a Maimer Echot, a single utterance, what is this Maimer Echot also is going to be explained. But then the world would have been created in such a manner that there would be no Bechira, and there would be no choice. A person would not have the Bechira. To explain just the principle of Bechira. Bechira really is a very odd thing. Bechira means a person has free choice. He can choose one way or another. He can choose good and he can choose bad. Now, the reality is that in the world was created by God, and therefore the world is exclusively good. Everything that exists represents Hashem's power to create, Hashem's presence. So how can there be Bechira? Everything comes from Hashem. How can there be Bechira? And the answer is that the Bechira comes as a result of the fact that the world, as we said before, is with words. The world was created in such a way that even though it's Hashem's presence that the world represents, but you can be completely oblivious to it. Oblivious means unaware. You can be completely unaware of it, to the extent that you can choose to do the right thing and to do the wrong thing. Okay? For instance, I'm going to give an extreme example, even an example that hardly even animals recognize. Even an animal, by nature, respects a human being. It's true. An animal respects a human being. Doesn't attack a human being in the same ease that would attack another animal. Because a human being somehow represents, a presence of a higher type, of a more significant type. Certainly another human being recognizes that a person is something divine. You don't hurt a person. It's got an neshama, it's got intellect. It is not something to be hurt or be destroyed, God forbid. And yet, it is possible for a person, to forget it and to go and do harm to another person, and sometimes even to kill another person, which is a horrific sin. One of the most extreme sins is to kill another person. There's absolutely no forgiveness for that. And yet it is possible. Because this greatness that is represented in the human being, it's possible for us not to be aware of it. Like we were discussing before. It's possible for a person to be so preoccupied with his own needs, with his own interests. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to have my breakfast? And he forgets completely about any real value in the world. To the point where he needs his breakfast, he goes and kills a person to take his food. And he can do that. That's being completely blind to reality. But it's possible. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. Only because the world was created with 10 utterances, this created the possibility of there being bechira chovshis, of free choice. This is really a creation of its own. How can it be bechira chovshis? How can you do things in the world without being aware of what the truth and reality of the world is? Because it was created with 10 utterances, it is possible. Bechira chovshis. And since it had bechira chovshis, as a result, yesh schar v'oinesh. This is why there is such a thing as schar v'oinesh, a reward and punishment in the world. Okay, so this is, I said, this is a statement, so to speak, a statement of intent that we are going to explain this principle that we now presented in this couple of sentences. The explanation for this is, what does it mean it was created? It was created with one utterance, and then there would be no bechira, and therefore there would be no schar v'oinesh, or it created with 10 utterances, and that created bechira and schar v'oinesh. Explanation is, Dehina Yodua, it is known, the Maimer Echod, that this which the Mishnah refers to, that the world could have been created with a single Maimer, Hu Maimer de Machshava. This is the Maimer of thought. In other words, the Maimer Echod, the single utterance, means such a utterance, such a statement, that in a single statement is included everything that was then uttered in ten utterances. The Maimer Echod is an all-inclusive statement. Where is this Maimer Echod? Where is this all-inclusive statement? This is the Maimer in Machshava. This is the way the statement is in thought. What is thought? The Niklo Maimer Echod. This is called Maimer Echod, one statement. Because the thought includes, in an overall way, in a general way, everything that is then detailed in speech, with a great amount of protim, a great amount of individual statement of details. This we can readily understand. Is gonna have a mashal for this, but even at this point, we can readily see that this, which a person speaks, and he can have a long talk about it, and in thought, this was a single, quick reflection, and this quick reflection really contained in a single form the entire structure that later on came out in speech. Regarding this thought, Maimer Echod, it says in the Pasuk, Hayoytzer Yachad Libo. This is a Pasuk in Tehillim. Hayoytzer Yachad Libo, Mabit al Kol Maaseyam. That Hashem designs their hearts, all the hearts of all the people, Yachad, all together, and He sees all of their deeds. And we also say in davening on Rosh Hashanah, Soifa Umabid Atzoiv kol hadoiris. That Hashem glances and He looks and sees to the end of all generations. Biskiro achas, with a single glance. Hashem sees with a single glance the entire world, not only the entire world, but the entire world till the end of all time. Sha'agam shemabit al kol hanivroim biprat, but even though that He is looking at all the creatures in all detail, on all of them, mikol mokom still, kulam niskorim biskiro achas. They're all recognized and glanced upon and seen biskiro achas, with a single glance. It's not that each one has to be looked at separately. With one glance, He sees all the details and all everything that exists. This is the concept of thought. And now he's going to give him a mashal. This is like, for example, in the thought in a person, where he is able to think berega achas, in one moment, that which in speech sorech ledaber kisho al kopon. He would need to speak at least an hour. So we all understand that thought, the reason that in thought he can in one moment think of that which in speech would require a whole hour to express, is not just because thought is faster than speech, but because thought relates to the things that he thinks at a different level, and there he can think of it in one instant of a whole idea that I can take an hour to describe. Do you understand that?
Rabbi,
like for instance, let's say this room was empty of any furnishings. And you came into this room and you said, let's set it up as a besmedrash. And at this moment, you pictured what the besmedrash should look like. In one instant. Then you said, okay, so how are we going to set it up? Okay, put this table over here, put this table over here, this table over here. So that which you had in this moment, in one moment, a whole picture, a whole idea of how you want to set it up, will take you whatever time to actually describe it. But in your thought, you had all of these details. You actually had a picture of how the room should look like in one thought, all the details. And yet, when it comes out in speech, it can take a whole long time to describe. This is true not only of such a simple thing as a room. He can in thought design a whole house in one instant. But you have a mind that this is what I want my house to be like. And then to explain it, it can take hours. And yet in this thought you already had all the details. This is called machshava, thought. Yes.
so that would mean that if Hashem spoke one utterance, we would only get a small part of His revelation, but the more utterances that He speaks, the more of a revelation of us knowing our surroundings.
My different. That means that if you want to have this whole thought, you have to learn further.
Because I'm assuming that the more Hashem would, like if he spoke 20
But
utterances,
did you hear what I said
that
to you?
means, yeah.
Okay?
Mm.
We have enough tasks to understand what we already read here.
Mm.
You understand? Everything else is going to be explained here. What will happen in our lessons. Okay?
Okay.
So this machshava, this maimer sheba machshava, this statement in machshava, this is called maimer echad. Because in machshava, this one thought includes everything. Now I want to explain to you a little deeper insight in this. We can all relate to this. We can all see that this is how the process is. That in thought he thinks of all the things which in speech, in one thought, and in speech it comes out in detail. There is a further insight, a deeper point that can be made here. In speech, everything comes out what's called cumulative. What cumulative means? One thing is added to the other. If you put this chair over here, then you say, okay, what do I do with this space? I put the chair over here. And what do I do with this space? Put the chair over here. And what do I do with this space? Everything is added. Cumulative. Everything is decided separately. The reason that you put this table over here is because there's space over here. This table over there because there's space over there. Everything has its individual reason. In thought, you have one perception of what the Besmedish is supposed to look like. And there, this table and that table and that table are all recognized as a unit, even though there are three different tables. You're not perceiving them because cumulatively you have an idea what the Besmedish is supposed to look like. It's all designed over there. All the tables and all the chairs and everything else. This is what's called machshava achas, one thought, one utterance. It's one statement that has an overview of the entire panorama, the entire description. But you look at it from a higher perspective. That which happens in speech happens like this. First you put the tables up. One table, another table, another table. Then put the chairs up. And then you take a look. Oh, now that looks like a Besmedish. When you put up the first table, it didn't look like a Besmedish. You put up a second table, it didn't look. When you said everything else, oh, that looks like you're like a Besmedish. So there, the Besmedish, the result, comes after you set up the individual pieces. In thought, it goes the opposite order. First, you have the overall meaning of what you want to do, and then everything falls into place. So this overall view that you had in your thought, this is called machshava achas. This is called one utterance, because this utterance really is the source of all the details. In speech, it goes the other way. The details is what creates the general, the overall. In thought, it goes the other way. First, you have the overall thought, and from this are deriven all the details. Okay? regarding this single statement that includes all other statements. Regarding this, the Gemara says, Bereshis Nami Maimer Hu. That Bereshis is also a Maimer. This is what this is referring to. We said that there are Sorim Amoras, there are 10 utterances. Maimer refers to every time that it says in the Chosik, in the Posik, Vayomer Hashem. Vayomer Hashem Yehi Oyer. Vayomer Hashem Yikovo Hamayim. Mitachas Hashemayim Mokim Echot. And then Vayomer Hashem Yehi Oires. There should be luminaries. Vayomer Hashem Tache Hores. There should be also produce vegetation. Every time it says Vayomer, that's a new creation, another part of the creation. So the Gemara asks, how do you say that there are 10 Mamoris? There are actually 9 Mamoris. There's only 9 times that it says Vayomer in the Chumash, not 10. And the Gemara answers that Bereshis, the first word, it says Bereshis, Bora Lekim, Mazel Tov.
Thank you very much.
Mazel Tov, Sak Nafas.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That Bereshis, Bora Lekim, Hashemayim Bozo Oretz, that also is also Maimer, even though it doesn't say the word Vayomer, but that is where everything was created in its initial state. But when it says Bereshis, Nami Maimer. What type of Maimer? It doesn't say Vayomer. It says Bora Lekim. So that's what that says. V'hainu. The reason that Bereshis is also included in Mamoris, it is because that this is the Bechinas Maimer Kloli de Machshov. This is this general Maimer, the overall Maimer statement, the way it existed in Machshov, the way it existed in thought. Actually, that it says that in this Bereshis, Bora Kim Shemayim Bezoretz, everything was created. Everything that was later on expressed in the Shemayim and Oretz was originally created in this one statement, Bereshis Bora Kim Shemayim Bezoretz. And then afterwards it was detailed and it was brought out individually. Maimer Klori de Machshava. The Machshava Achas, which means that with one single thought, Nivru kol ha'ilomes bichlal. All the worlds, overall, in general, were created with this one thought. V'yachar kach, and afterwards, nifratu b'dibur b'prat. Afterwards, they were specified in speech, each one specifically. But when the Posik says that Bereshis Bora Lekim as a Shomayim, Hashem created the Shomayim. What is Shomayim? Shomayim is not just an open space. Shomayim is the Shomayim and everything that the Shomayim represents, the stars and the planets, everything. This is the Shomayim. And Oretz does not mean just earth. It means earth, dry land, and the oceans and the rivers, and earth means the vegetation, earth means the animals, earth means everything. Everything that's on the earth.
The whole world's in that first utterance.
The whole everything. The whole richness of the entire creation is in that first utterance. Because Shamayim, let's say, without all the hosts of the Shemayim, what is it? It's just plain space. Earth, without all the richness that's in the earth, what's earth? Everything that's on the earth is part of the richness of the initial statement of creation of the earth. This is what the Mishnah means when it says, "V'haloi b'maimer echod yochel lehiboris." Couldn't it have been created into one utterance? Hainu, this means to say, this refers to hamaimer echod b'machshava. Refers to this single maimer of machshava, of thought. Because when, as I said, when earth was thought about, it was thought about just like we gave the motion before, the example of a besmedrash. When you think of besmedrash, you don't think a room. You think a room with all the furnishings and everything that facilitates a besmedrash. The same thing when you say earth, you don't mean earth just a clump of dry sand. You mean earth and all the richness that comes with it. And therefore, when it says in the Mishnah, it could have been created. The meaning of that is, it could have been created means who, the meaning of that is, that in fact, they were in fact created with this one mind. This is when they were all created. And then afterwards, they first surfaced. You were able to identify them individually. But in thought, they were all existent at that time. Because this is a pasuk. The pasuk says, that my thoughts, Hashem says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. In other words, when you say Hashem thinks of Hashem, and we have also thoughts that the human being thinks. So we think of that Hashem's thought, we imagine, what does it mean? It's like we think. Hashem said, the Pasuk says, no, you should know that that thoughts by a human being and thoughts by Hashem are not of the same quality at all. Not the same power whatsoever. My thoughts are not like your thoughts. And what's the difference? The difference is that immediately, when it came to Hashem's thought and will, that there should be worlds, they were immediately came into being. The thought itself also has the power to create. Before the uttering, before the saying, the uttering of the words, before the creation, the thought already has the power to create. As we will explain further down. Masha kosuv yochel hiboreis, or Masha Omar yochel hiboreis. The fact that the Mishnah says that yochel hiboreis, it could have been created. Could have been created seems to be saying that it didn't in fact get created, but it could have been. But we are saying no, it got in fact created. So that explains the reason it says it could have been. Really, it actually was created with one thought. Why does the Mishnah say yochel hiboris? It could have been ratzol loimer. It means to say shehoya efsher, that it was actually possible sheyishoaru ha'oilanos, that the world should remain k'moi shenivru, the way they were created by machshava, the way they were created in thought. It could have been left alone and at the level of thought. It would have been a real creation, but on the thought level. Why was it necessary to specify the dibur davke in speech? Why was it necessary to specify it in speech? Zehu, that is not just in order to create the world. But this is beyond that. This is another step in the creation. Militin Sochar Toiv. It is in order to have the whole principle of punishment and reward. In other words, what the Mishnah is saying, that if the worlds were to remain, they were created in thought, then there would not have been the free choice. And thus, there would not have been reward and punishment. But now that they were created through speech, therefore there is the possibility of choice. And therefore, there is reward and punishment. Excuse me?
Because of speech, that's why it makes reward and punishment.
Right. Because it came out individually. This will further describe to give us, so to speak, so to speak, a glance ahead, so that you have a little bit of a handle on this. The principle of free choice, a person can choose, as we said before, comes from the fact that, like I said, that you look at something in the world, you don't immediately recognize that this is a godly creation, that there is a God in the world. You don't immediately see it. Because you don't immediately see it, therefore it becomes a challenge. You can forget about the significance of the creation, and you can do the right thing, you can do the wrong thing. This is where Bechira comes from. But you can look at the world in two ways, like I said, Nefesh Abahamis and Nefesh Olekis. Why? Because it came out in speech. What does speech mean? Something comes out outside. You can take the speech and you don't pay attention to the speaker. You only take the speech, and becomes an entity unto itself. Whereas that which is in thought is inseparable from the thinker. In thought exists his part in the person. And the same thing, you say that the world was created by Hashem's thought, then it would be inseparable from Hashem. Then you could not make a mistake and think that this world is a separate entity. And therefore the whole possibility of doing a sin would not be possible. And therefore there would be no Bechira. And therefore there would be no Schar V'Einush. So this is the principle in a nutshell. Which, as we go along, we're able to see this more in detail and in greater depth, and so forth. Okay, this is it for today.